Well, I've entitled this sermon today, Self-Assessment. Do any of you work for somebody or used to work for somebody that was fond of giving self-assessments, give you kind of a list of questions and ask you to write down what you think of your job and how you've been performing? Any of you? Just raise your hand if you've experienced that. I hate those. Do you hate them as much as I hate them? Absolutely hate self-assessments. I would rather just have the person give me their honest opinion of what I've done and that would be over, rather than to have me have to spend all that time assessing myself. I find that I either grade myself too harshly, don't laugh at that, okay, or I give myself too much credit for results that, might even be happy accidents or maybe the product of somebody else that works for the place. Do you feel like that? Have you sensed that tension before between, are you humble or do you over, grandize yourself on the piece of paper? Now, you'll be happy to know that when I applied not that long ago to your search committee, I went the direction of saying that everything was to my credit. I mean, why be humble in a moment like that? Just put every, stuff like, hey, I got a participation award in 6th grade when I ran in a race. There was only 2 of us. But, you might as well put every single award that you get on those things, right? You want the paper stack to be thick. Or at least that's what I was told. No, actually, I really wish that I could have that burden taken away from me. There is a certain amount of agony that comes with self-assessment, You agonize about, do I say it like this? How do I say it without bragging about myself? You know what I mean? There's kind of an art form involved with telling people about yourself and all the wonderful accomplishments that you have been able to do without going overboard. And then you don't want to be self-loathing either. You don't want to act like you've done nothing because, who wants to read that? And you're certainly not going to get a raise if you do, right? I mean, come on. But I want to tell you today, as I was looking at the text and preparing for this sermon, the Lord's Prayer sounds a lot like self-assessment to me. Maybe that's why I'm not always a fan of the Lord's Prayer, to be quite honest. Well, let's go back to our confirmation days. How many of you in confirmation class had the same kind of challenge that me and some of the other kids in the confirmation class did? We would say the Lord's Prayer as fast as possible because you had to memorize it, right? And so we would practice this and see who could say the Lord's Prayer the fastest. Any of you win? Come on, put your hands up if you won the competition. No, you're not going to admit that? Well, I see you every Sunday. You do the same thing. We do, don't we? Sometimes we try to race through it. We want to get on with things, and part of that sense of trying to rush through it, I think, is because that many of us understand that there is some of this self-assessment going on if we say the word slow enough. And so God help us from saying it too slow, right? We fast forward this thing, because if you take it too slow, oh boy, it's an incredibly daunting task to pray this simple little prayer. Even though Luke has shortened it from us, This is the shortest version of the Lord's Prayer that we find in Scripture. We actually take a couple of accounts and put them together just to have enough material to call it a prayer in church, right? I mean, we're used to long prayers. Give us each day our daily bread. Okay, here's my problem with this one, all right? That sends my mind racing through a long list of things that I know I should be grateful for. Am I right? Give us each day our daily bread. And my mind immediately starts racing. If I stay on that thing too slowly, I'm thinking, gosh, my job, my checks every 2 weeks. I pray I get one this week. you start thinking about that. Well, and my health insurance, and then there's my pension that's getting paid, and there's my McDonald's points. There's the family barbecues, and there's the picnics. There's the weddings and baptisms and birthdays and anniversary celebrations, and my goodness, the list goes on, and food is connected to so much, isn't it? So then it's made on purpose. He's purposely telling us to think about all those things. Think about those anniversaries. Think about those birthdays. Think about all the receptions you've attended. Think about all those graduation parties. Think about all those kiss camera events, at the stadiums. There's all these things that bring us together. And so many of the highlights revolve around food. How grateful we are because it's all a gift. And like I said, it's a little uncomfortable for us to sit here this morning, isn't it? And have our minds have to rehearse all these events, all these blessings, and think about how grateful we are, how blessed we are. Man, sometimes I feel really guilty about how blessed I am. I don't know about you, but looking around at the world now, I got it pretty good. And forgive us our sins. Here's another one we need to race through, right? Even more so, we need to race through this one because I don't want to think about it for all that long a time. And forgive us our sins, because then my mind starts racing through all of my past relationships. And boy, that's a train wreck. Times I got into fist fights. Okay, I didn't train for them. They often happen because my peers would pressure me. Are you going to take it from him? You going to let him get away with that? No, I don't want him to get away with that. Oh, you got to challenge him. Oh, I don't really. I'm not really the challenging type. Oh, well, yeah, that's why. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And there I was, a couple of fist fights. Luckily, I don't think I really landed any that mattered. Or how about all those times I said those mean and hateful things? Oh, not to people's faces. Come on, I'm not that stupid. No, I mean when people had their backs turned. I'm sure none of you have any of those, right? That's why you're here. Because you don't have so much of this stuff. All the hateful things we said about others behind their backs. That's where self-assessment might help us, right? We're very good. We're very good at assessing other people. I've noticed this about myself. I can sit there and tell you all kinds of weaknesses other people have. I can tell you, oh boy, we could spend a whole day talking about other people's weaknesses that I've experienced. Have you done the same thing? Heck, sometimes we even form groups just to do this. Hey, let's get together for coffee at Casey's. Yeah, I've got some more stuff to talk through. Ran into some neighbors you might want to hear about. Am I right? This is what real life is about, and I don't like to think about it for too long. The times I ignored people, that's really tough, isn't it? Because even now I'm thinking, I wonder how many people I've forgotten that I ignored. It seems like a double entendre or something. You know what I'm saying? It's just awkward that I can't remember the people that I intentionally ignored. Oh. Well, I must admit I've had good excuses. Many of you had good excuses. Most of the time I'm too busy. I'm a busy person. I got an important job. They require me to show up at least one day a week. too tired. Sometimes I'm just lazy, you know. I have a right to be lazy. Aren't you lazy sometimes, you know? You see someone on the side of the road, their battery obviously hasn't worked, and you're like, oh, they should have charged it. You know, there's a Valvoline up the street. They could have gone there. Oh, everybody's got a cell phone. I don't need to stop. You know, I'd be late for church. Can't have that happening. Oh my God, that sounds like the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan parable. We just preached that a couple weeks ago. Good thing I didn't think of it then. Whew, okay. Or just didn't care enough to get involved. I hate to say that, but we do a lot of scrolling like that. You know what scrolling is, right? You get on your little computer called a phone. Right? We don't use those, by the way. If you make phone calls on your phone, you're just telling everybody your age. Okay? We don't talk to people unless you see them in person these days. It's just a text. That's the only way I communicate to my children. just text it in there, right? Gosh, where was I going with that? I totally lost the train of thought. Oh, that's right. Care enough to get involved. Okay, so we're scrolling along on Facebook, and then, do you do this? I do this sometimes. I'll stop on an article that says people are starving somewhere, and I go, yep, okay. You know, or, oh, so-and-so, you know, they've got a life situation, and we got a new Fund Me page, you know, and, okay, I don't think I know them. How many of the world tragedies go by with just a touch of my finger, you know? Wow, what power. It's so relieving, too, because I don't want to be stopped in my tracks. I don't want to be forced to look at that too long. I don't want to have the anxiety that produces, that I might actually have to respond to something like those kids in Gaza. You know, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see more of the flood footage. I don't want to know too much about Texas. Oh, it suddenly got quiet in the room. Maybe I'm making a point here. Maybe I'm starting to drive it home. For we ourselves forgive everyone indebted to us. That's the next line of Luke's version. For we ourselves forgive everyone indebted to us. Now, that seems like bad English to me. I don't know. It's hard to say. Of course, this is a new Bible I got, so maybe the translation has done something to this, but it doesn't really fall off the tongue like the other ones do, so I can get it by quickly, right? But I'll work on it. I was one of the kids that got the Lord's Prayer done pretty quick. Me, forgive others, indebted? Not really. I kind of keep a running tab. You know, if you borrow money from me, I've got your name in my book. You done something and screwed something up. I might not have it written down, but I remember, and I probably won't ask you again. Or I might hold it against you and think, nah, you know, I told that person a secret and you can't trust them. I'm sure you don't do that, right? You don't do any of that. When you're sitting there at breakfast and you want to say something and you're like, oh, but she's there at the table. I can't. Better not open my mouth unless I want the whole church to know. Right? Have I done a good job forgiving others? In some cases, I like to say maybe I have. Oh, well, tell me one case. We'll come back to that. See how that works, right? I don't know about you, but sometimes that's how I feel. I'm like, wait a second. Can I really think of individual cases? Can I think of individual names in which I've actually done that? Hard, isn't it? You'd spend the rest of your afternoon doing it, sitting there and thinking about who you've actually done that with. But I still have some grievances I'm holding on to, of course. And I'm not going to let them go for anybody, not even God. Oh, I said that out loud. Are you saying things out loud? You see what I mean? This Lord's Prayer thing, I think it seems a lot like self-assessment whenever you say it. And I would rather just skip this hard work and just have God put me in one group or another. Am I a righteous lamb? Or am I an unrighteous goat? And I don't mean it like the kids say it today. The kids say goat and it's the greatest of all time, And no, I mean the old biblical sense of goat, which meant something like bad. Kind of like that, right? Okay, it was much funnier when I was doing it in the office by myself. Okay, hold on a second. Don't say that again. Okay, I'm taking it out. Well, let's get into some of the details about this text. Yeah, only Luke offers this prayer in response to a request from his disciples, which also imparts to us this understanding that just before it, Jesus himself was praying. So we get this text from Luke, and it's like Luke is trying to tell us, here's a big difference between following Jesus and following everyone else. Jesus does what he tells others to do. Jesus isn't there saying, you should pray. No, me? No, I'm taken care of. No, Jesus is praying all the time. Passage after passage after passage in Luke. You see Jesus always taking some time to pray. Now, sometimes it's by himself. Sometimes it's in front of other people. Sometimes people are always kind of sneaking up on Jesus and finding him in prayer. What you doing, Jesus? Now, if people snuck up on me, they'd be like, what you doing again? Scrolling on your phone? What you doing? Checking out the football scores? What you doing? Nothing? Yeah. No. They sneak up on Jesus and they find him doing the stuff that he's been telling us to do. That's scary. In our world, that's a little scary. Jesus himself prays. Jesus practices what he teaches. We need more of that in this world, don't you think? Maybe this is a reason to follow him. Luke also elevates the role of persistence with including this weird story, right? Which I wish Joe would not take so seriously. The other night, Joe's banging on the door. Pastor, I got some, Pastor, come on, open up. Okay, it wasn't really Joe, but it could have been because we all know Joe, right? If anybody's going to do this in this text, I think Joe would. This persistence. What's this all about? Knocking at somebody's door? Are we supposed to do that really? Do you really want somebody, your neighbor, coming over and saying, I know it's 3 a.m, but I'm baking cookies and I don't have fresh eggs. And so, Karen, can you lend me some, Who wants to get up? Who wants to respond to this? This is a very, honestly, it's a reckless parable, right? It's a reckless parable because it makes us all uncomfortable. I mean, the person asking and the person receiving the bid. So what's going on here? Other than perhaps to suggest that God is so patient and we not so much. It's also a parable about, in this whole Lord's Prayer thing, about how to talk to God. So if we look and analyze the structure of the prayer, like so many of the commentators did in the commentaries I read, these are kind of like essentials for how to talk to God. You start by calling God by name. And you would think that would be simple, but it's not. Right? What do we say? Do we go for the formal? Something like, the greatest that ever has been, and now in the corner, coming in the white uniform, and build up, the greatest of all time, the Almighty. Do we want to make God so inapproachable and high and holy with whatever address that we use? Or do we go to, the extremes to make God chummy, our best friend here, our ally, our buddy? That would be weird, right? Start the prayer off saying, hey, buddy, let's not try that. And yet we do get something very familiar. Father, Abba. And all the commentators will tell you, that's like saying daddy. Wow, So there's a household being established here. There's a familiarity with this God that God seems to invite us to have, so that we don't get too bashful about bringing our prayers before God. If you know that we're in the same household, that there's love and respect here, you don't have to, tippy-toe around things. You can go right to the source and get it off your chest. And yet it also, in that next moment, hallowed be thy name, suggests that there's a tension here between familiarity and distance, right? We want God to be familiar to us, that we can share everything, but at the same time, we don't want to treat him so casually like he's a little religious buddy or trinket or a genie in a lamp, right? To remember that this is, after all, the creator of all things, including us. There is this sort of submission to God that has to happen. We are submitting our lives. We're submitting everything that we do to God's review. And then in that prayer, we are requesting our physical as well as our spiritual needs. Notice how Luke does that by making the prayer very short. We should pray for our bread, our physical needs. We should pray for the forgiveness of people. Well, that's a spiritual need. Physical, spiritual, linked positively together. We need to be praying for what is essential about both halves of our one true self. And then overall, to be persistent in constantly being in communication with God. Don't hide your needs from God. Seems to be part of what Luke is trying to get us to observe. God asks us, after all, Jesus asks us in this gospel, what can I do for you? That's a stunning question, isn't it? If Jesus came today and said, well, Jim, what would you like me to do for you? Extra pillow or two? A couple extra rounds of physical therapy? Surgery? How about some drugs? What can I do for you? But it gets at the very heart of things, doesn't it? Someone who has the ability to ask us that question, like God does? Is there any greater love than that? What can I do for you? Why, what can I do to make you more comfortable? What can I do to make you your best self? What can I do to help you with the tensions that you're feeling when you pray my prayer? And how do we apply this to our lives today after hearing this all and going through this exercise, this sort of self-assessment? Well, certainly it's a call to daily prayer, is it not? Just like daily exercise, most of us put off. We also put off the daily prayer part too. But there are simple things that we can do. We all know it, but maybe we should rehearse that too, Set an alarm on your phone, for goodness sakes. You're always scrolling and looking on it anyway. Set that alarm and put a little note. Time to pray. In other world religions, you got to admit, they got us beat. They schedule these things, They set the alarm. They show up on time. They pray in the morning. They pray in the midday. They pray in the evening. They pray before they go to bed. They have certain times delineated, and they pray. Many of us take a sort of democratic approach. Well, if I get some time. Message on the refrigerator. Remember how we used to put messages on the refrigerator with those magnets? We could still do that, if you're old school. Marie, are you listening? Anyway, okay. Note on the dashboard of your car. Not you, Bert. We want you to watch the road, okay? But the rest of you, put it on your dashboards. We can always use resources. We don't have to think of these things on our own. There are devotional guides for everything these days, right? Whether you're a mother or a father, whether you're a law enforcement personnel or a firefighter. And it seems like there are guides for everything under the sun vocationally, right? Reading lists, printed prayers, podcast, email devotions. There should be no one on the planet that can't find some resource to help us with prayer. Use prayer beads, pocket crosses. Yeah, I'm talking to you folks that squirm because we're going on a little long. We're doing that on purpose. No, I'm not. But the food's still cooking downstairs. We'll go with that. You know, some of us we have trouble with attention. So how can we stay involved? And when prayer seems like, oh gosh, it's such an inward thing and there's nothing to do but just sit there, you know? I don't know about you, but that's like troubling to me. I can't sit for 5 minutes in silence, you know? I would never make it in a monastery, you know? I'd be asking questions. I would be trying to get them to talk or something. But there are other ways that you could do this, you know? If you're a touchy-feely person, those prayer beads, I know that the Catholics have the rosary, but, you know, it's okay for us to do something similar with some beads and stuff. We can use candles. I know some ministers, they're always lighting candles. Light candles is a way of thinking and reflecting. Meditative music might work for some of you. Breathing techniques. Heck, I know some UCC churches have labyrinths on the campus where they walk and, now we don't have space for that, but, there's a cemetery, I swear it could be used as a labyrinth, right? You just kind of walk and see if you can stop from tripping over a tombstone or something. Coloring books are now being used by folks to pray. Painting, pottery, cooking even. All these are activities in which you can pray as you're doing. And oftentimes there's kind of a service element if you fall into that group that likes to do something active all the time, you know. At one of the churches I served, there was this lady, she loved to cook, and so every Sunday she was handing out cookies to guests. And we all prayed when guests didn't come, because guess who got the cookies? So there's that. Folks, I'll just leave you with that thought. The Lord's Prayer is really about self-assessment. And it needs to be done every single day. Because if we don't, left to our own devices, you might turn out like me. Amen.